Joining us now on the hotline is Bob Beers. Bob, what's up?
Morning, Ty. How are you?
Very well. I'm assuming you're doing very well today as well after what happened last night
Yeah.
with your Maine Black Bears.
Yeah, congratulations to them. That's awesome. It's been a big turnaround for them, right? I mean, they've struggled here for a number of years, so good to see them back on top.
You obviously you went there, you played there. When the program is as good as it is right now, what is the buzz around Maine and around that team?
It's everything. It's everything. There's nothing else up there. It's no. When I was going back a long time ago, but in the late '80s when I was up there, the baseball team had been good before we got there, and then they kind of dipped a little bit. But so we were in the late '80s. Hockey was everything. I mean, that place. It's not a huge arena. It was packed every night. Everybody was there. It's just hockey was on everybody's minds every weekend. That was it. And we were a good team, and we were fortunate enough to enjoy that. And then they finally, or I shouldn't say finally, but they won the national championship just after I left. They won in '93 was the first one. So it's good to see them back on the map.
Yeah, it's great, and I saw the banner being raised, and I was like, wow, different look. You know, the little flag they have kind of hanging from the bottom of it. I was like, that's a color scheme I haven't seen in a long time, and I'm super happy because people who, like you've said, people who go there, like they just love it so much, and it's awesome to see, and just a little bit of the competition here for the BUs and the BCs. So I always enjoy that personally. Bob, this Bruins team obviously. They've lost 4 games in a row now. There's a lot to dissect. I think the big thing I keep coming back to here, the second periods have been an issue the last 3 games, it feels like. What have you seen? What have you noticed from this team in those middle frames?
Well, last game was a tough one. I mean, you're up against a really good team in Vegas. You're up against it. You're playing a good game. You're only down. I mean, you're scoreless after 1. You're down 1. It's just some mistakes that are made, like the wrong mistakes at the wrong times. You have an unforced icing. You have a breakdown of a face-off after the icing, and now it's 2-0. And then the floodgates open a little bit. It's just, you're up against it lineup-wise. I mean, when you look at Vegas's lineup compared to the Bruins lineup,
yeah,
honestly, it's not even close. So if Vegas plays their game, you're gonna be up against it already. So you can't self-inflict. You can't have mistakes that you make that are mistakes that you can avoid. There's going to be mistakes made in a game, but just the ones that you shouldn't make and that put you at a disadvantage. And then the floodgates open. So. I mean, that game the other day was a perfect example. I mean, it's scoreless after 1. You go down 1-0. It's a power play goal by Vegas. They have a good power play. It wasn't a great penalty call, but okay. You still have to try to kill it. They don't. But you're only down 1-0. Don't self-inflict or don't implode. And they did. It was just some of the mistakes that were made that were avoidable. And the second periods, like you said. Those are tough. When you get stuck inside your own zone, it wasn't as bad as Tampa, right? It wasn't as bad as nothing can be that bad. Having no shots on goal, getting outshot 20-0, and only having 3 attempts. You never got the puck out of your zone. It wasn't that bad, but the second periods are tough if you don't really execute the way you need to.
And you mentioned self-inflicting, goals against, what have you. Do you look at that? Because I thought this was an interesting kind of, I was having a conversation with my friends about it. That third goal, right? It's a second 3-on-1 within like 5 minutes. Is that they have to do that because they have to try to create offense, or is that an example of self-inflicted, damage done to the Bruins?
I don't know. I mean, it's kind of the reality of it. You mentioned they've lost 4 in a row. I think that's what you said, right?
Yes.
They've lost 12 of 15.
Oh yeah.
Hey, I don't know if people realize that. I mean, some of them are overtime, some of them were a shootout or whatever. But you get a point here and a point there. But you've lost 12 of 15 games. I mean, I think reality's kind of set in right now, hasn't it? Of where this team is and where they're going to finish. And this road trip doesn't get much easier. I mean, you got San Jose today, who's obviously a rebuilding team, but they've got some young talent. They've got a first overall pick. They've got where are you in the kind of the pecking order? I think that's what we're looking at moving forward, in terms of whatever draft and, how this team gets better on the fly so that you're more competitive and in a playoff talk next year. They've been in a playoff talk for a while, but I don't know if they still are.
Yeah, it's very interesting because this is the first time that we've watched games, probably like 20 years in terms of watching them and saying, okay, well they lost and that part is tough to handle, but it improves their draft positioning, right? And it's like, well, we got to analyze the team today, right? And that's sort of like the weird part for I think a lot of fans is you want to be upset that they're losing games, but you're also got to think big picture, right? And it feels like the focus is shifting towards the big picture for this team. One of those guys is Morgan Geekie. He's obviously thrived on that top line. He's now, I believe, the fifth longest tenured Bruin, which speaks to the turnover here of this franchise in the last year plus. This is a guy who, like, what do you think about him? And do you think this is a guy who's maybe just finally entering his prime, so to speak, and the Bruins are, getting the player that Seattle and Carolina couldn't be patient with?
I hope so. I mean, it helps that he's playing with Pastrnak, right? I mean, if that line's not scoring, who is?
Yeah.
And I think we're going to see some different looks. I don't know if it's tonight or not, or if it's moving forward. We're going to see some different looks in terms of the lines. You got to find out if some guys can play. But Kiki's had a good year, a very good year, and I think that you kind of scratch the surface a little bit on what he can do. He's got a good one-timer. He's got a pretty good hockey sense. He's a physical guy when he needs to be. He's a big guy, and he can get in on the forecheck. So I think that. He's obviously a priority in terms of who you're going to re-sign next summer. I'm not breaking the bank for him, but he's definitely a priority who you're going to re-sign. But this is, I think it's just such an audition here the last month of the season, and who looks good in a Bruins uniform, who's going to be here moving forward. You're going to see some guys called up. They only have a certain amount of call-ups, and that's kind of your hands are tied a bit with that. So you have two guys here that are extras right now that are here on emergency basis, so you can't play them unless somebody's hurt. And they have to be legitimately hurt. And then you have four call-ups between now and the end of the season. So you will see some guys coming from Providence. But who is in Providence that we haven't seen that deserves to be here? And that's a big question for me. The one guy that jumps to mind, you asked me about Geekie. I know I'm kind of going off topic.
No, I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, the one guy that comes to mind is Fraser Minton, from the guy that came from Toronto in the Carlo trade. Mm-hmm. I would imagine we'll see him at some point. I know he had a hat trick the other night for Providence. But who else is down there that we haven't seen that has a chance to play here next year? And that's a big question for me. Is it a free agent signing, college free agent signing? I mean, you're going to start to see some of those. The college teams that are out of it right now, that's a possibility here. But you only have a certain amount of call-ups and between now and the end of the season. And I definitely want to see some new faces here and see what they look like with, different players in this lineup.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, and relating it to Geekie is would you want to see him? We've seen him on other lines before, so it's not like it's a complete unknown. But there are so many new faces, right? And there are so many new pieces that may or may not be here moving forward. Like, do you almost want to see him with Middlestat perhaps for a little bit and just see if there's a connection there? Like how do you approach the final 12 games with a guy like him who is a pending RFA in line for a sizable raise, perhaps this offseason?
I want to see him with somebody else. I want to see Middlestat with Pasta. Mm-hmm. I want to see Middlestat can play.
Yeah.
He's signed for a couple more years at a pretty good number, and he was he was a top 10 pick for Buffalo. I mean, this guy, what can he do? What's his upside? What's his potential? What's his ceiling? Can he play with Pastrnak and make Pastrnak a better player? He's already a good player, right? He's starting to. He's been driving that line. He's been driving any line he's been on this year. This is the type of season he's had with not much help around him. Look at the discrepancy in the amount of points Pasta has compared to the next closest guy. If the Bruins were ever to make the playoffs, he would be an MVP candidate, no doubt. I mean, it's not even close. The next closest, player on the Bruins team in terms of points. So, who's he best fit with? Is it Zacha, or can you bring out more in Middlestat playing with him? So I think you're going to see maybe some of that. Does Geeky play the off wing on that line? Like he's doing now. Sure. Let's see what that line looks like. You're going to see some different combinations here moving forward, and I think Joe Sacco alluded to that the other day. He didn't go to it against Vegas, but I think it's coming here pretty soon.
Bob, to your point, Pastrnak has a 37-point lead over the next highest scorer on the Bruins, who's Brad Marchand, who's not even here anymore. So on the team, the next closest guy is Pavel Zacha with 42 points. So to your point, he has double the next closest guy on the Bruins. It's been absolutely insane how Pastrnak has dragged this team basically on his back for the last, I would say, 3 months almost.
If he's not on the score sheet, who is?
It's true. Yeah. I mean, like it felt like in that Vegas game, he was like that line was creating everything, and besides that, it was like, all right, well, let's see what else was out there, what can generate, and it wasn't much.
No, and that's every night right now. Husnudinov had a couple of chances, one or two chances, right in the second period, but who else really had legitimate chances? What line had legitimate chances in that game? And just there weren't any that I can remember.
And that's the challenge now for this team, is finding guys who can create more and maybe finding some late season connections that you hope can be part of the future. Bob, before we let you go, Bruins, San Jose, what are you looking for tonight from the Bruins? I know it's a hard. There's 20 things we're looking for, but if we gotta keep it simple to just tonight's game, what do you want to see rebound for this team?
Just compete level. I mean, look, most teams that they're going to play against, they're going to be, the Vegas game. Just look at the lineups, right? You're up against it. You're going to be up against it. Well, today's a little bit different because you got a young lineup in San Jose. You got a team that's got the fewest wins in the NHL. I'd love to see a W. But it's not the be all, the end all. I just want to see the compete level right now, and I want to see a team that cares, and I want to see a team that plays for themselves. And this, that was our kind of. We sat around yesterday talking a little bit. The one thing that kind of I'm concerned about is the leadership in the room moving forward. You don't have McAvoy there, you don't have Lindholm there, Hampus. Where's the leadership coming from in that room, and where is it going? Where is it heading to starting next year? And, I want to see – I just want to see guys playing for one another. So that's a big one for me. And does that come from the outside? Does it come from the inside? I'm not sure, before here next year. But that's a big one for me, because I think that with all the guys that they traded and the quality of people that they traded, you're missing a lot of that in that locker room.
Yeah, and culture is huge, right? Like if the culture's not there,
here in Boston,
right?
It's been the Bruins. It's not the the Belichick way or the Patriots way, but there's been a big culture here. There's been a good culture here and a good leadership room, and I don't know if that's there right now.
Scary. It's changing of the guard, and you got to hope that guys are up to the task of embracing that and growing with it. Bob, 10 p.m. pregame, 10:30 puck drop tonight in San Jose?
That's what I'm told. I'm not sure. We'll be over at the rink this morning, and we'll see the morning skate and figure out everything then.
Awesome. We're looking forward to hearing you tonight on the call of tonight's game. Bob Beers, thank you so much again for joining us. I know it's an early morning out there in California, so we appreciate it.
Okay, Ty. Thanks.